Welcome in, everyone. It is Friday already. Once again, where has the time gone? But you know it. You're here for Britt's Fantasy Blitz, and I am your host, Britt Flinn. Thank you so much for joining us on this very busy time of the year. I was just talking with producer Tony prior to the show about how busy this time of year is. And not only are we getting ready for all of our holiday parties, our get togethers, doing our last minute shopping, cleaning, things like that, but we have football all weekend long. There are 2 games tomorrow, there's a full slate on Sunday, and then there are 3 games on Christmas Day. So we've got plenty to look forward to and to go through. But as always, we're going to start out here and recap last night's game. And looking at the box score, if you didn't watch the game, you would think that this game was much closer than it was. But it was not. The Saints came back in garbage time. Um, their usage of Alvin Kamara really, really puzzling. Just not throwing him to him at all. He got 5 receptions. And then once they started throwing to him, oh, it's like they started coming back. Who would have thought one of your best players getting him involved would help them come back? But the Rams looked very, very good, especially Puka Nakua. Everybody was talking about how great he looked. He was the talk of all the morning football shows today. But Cooper Cup, on the other hand, kind of had a little case of the dropsies. There were 2 or 4 dropped early on, including 2 in the end zone. Then again, those Saints got those 2 garbage time touchdowns, but this game was way, way out of hand. And now, after winning 5 of their last 6, the Rams do have a 78% chance to make the playoffs. So they're just getting hot at the right time, and that's exactly something that you want to see. I see you guys in the chat. JB, Merry Christmas to you as well. Ani Coop, thank you so much. I had to wear it because the Dodgers signed Yamamoto, and that was the notification that I went to bed last night. And Merry Christmas to you as well. Robert, happy holidays to you. Angie, happy holidays. And Rex, great to see you in the chat. I can't wait to see what you bring for your bold predictions today because, as you know, we don't only recap the Thursday night football game and go through the injuries, we also talk start sit-ems. We go through our sneaky DFS cheapies, talk bold predictions, and then get in our sleeper picks for the week. And as we mentioned, it's a busy week and it starts very, very soon. Dustin in the chat, Merry Christmas to you as well. Thank you so much for being here. So the Rams, Matthew Stafford looked so incredibly good last night. 24 out of 34, 328 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kieran Williams also had a great game. They showed his mom in the stands, and I go, he's going to score this touchdown. And of course he did. They could not have scripted it better. I know there's the big running joke that the NFL is scripted, but showing his mom in the stands and then him scoring that touchdown was just incredibly amazing. Another great player that the Rams have had, and if you have him on your fantasy roster, he's really, really paid off in a big way. And I will fully admit, I made fun of my husband for blowing so much fab on Puka Nakua at the beginning of the season. But he is now in first place. After last night, it looks like he's going to move on even further because he had 9 receptions, 164 yards, and a touchdown. Just incredible to see what we're getting out of a 5th round guy. Cooper Cup, again, 6 receptions, only 52 yards. A couple of those drops in the end zone just absolutely killed me. Not really sure why he couldn't get anything going, but it was a little concerning, especially if you started him in your playoffs. Then Demarcus Robinson coming out of nowhere over the past few weeks, 6 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. So great things to see there. I keep seeing people float in the chat, and I love seeing you all here. Merry Christmas, Chargy. Hi to Miss Dasher, and hi, Tootsie Pop. And then just another Dave. Great to see you in here. Yes, we have worked at or met at Buster's a couple times, our local dive bar, if you do not know and are familiar with the Arkansas area. So great to see you in here. Really appreciate you joining us. Trending towards the Saints, Derek Carr, 27 of 40. His stats ended up looking a lot better than what he actually looked like to the eye test. 319, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Again, Alvin Kamara, 9 rushing attempts for 19 yards, and then 5 receptions for 16. Very, very poor outing from him. I'm not just saying that because I'm a little salty because I have had Alvin Kamara as a big integral part to one of my fantasy teams, and I'm a little bit nervous after the outing that he put up last night. But hey, at least it wasn't the negative that Bijan put up for me last week. So at least he got something. Chris Olave had a great game, 9 for 123, and then Rashid Shaheed, 5 for 70 and one touchdown. So moving on to some news, there's not really a lot of news. Everything is centered around the injuries right now. So I will give you a chance to get your pen and paper as always because it is lengthy. It is that time of year where everybody is banged up and you can't afford to take a zero or not have a backup in your lineup if somebody doesn't play. So the only news item that I have today is that Arthur Smith was fined $25,000 and the Falcons were fined $75,000 for the injury related reporting in week 7 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is something that we've been waiting to see for the entire time. We all knew what he did was wrong. We knew that it was a clear violation, especially since he went and told us all that Bijan had started experiencing symptoms on Saturday night, on the night before, and yet he still wasn't included on the injury report. So I think that this is an appropriate punishment. I'm glad that something actually happened. A little bit surprised that it took that long, to be honest, but with Arthur Smith on the hot seat for his usage and just his disdain of fantasy managers and betting players, maybe he can finally come to the light and get Bijan incorporated into this offense next week. So again, injury news, there is lots of this, so much of it, and my heart just sinks reading some of these names. Yesterday, Greg Dortch and Hollywood Brown were still not practicing for the Cardinals, and I believe that Brown was ruled out earlier today just before the show. So fire up all your Trey McBride. Maybe even if you've got some Michael Wilson, fire him up in some deeper leagues. But it's going to be an interesting game in Chicago. I feel like this is going to be the battle of the quarterbacks more than it is the battle of the wide receivers. The Baltimore Ravens listed Zay Flowers limited due to a foot injury, and Odell Beckham is not practicing. Now, whether or not that's a veteran rest situation for Odell Beckham, we have to wait and see. But that game is the late game on Monday night. It is the final game of the entire week. So if you are counting on Zay Flowers or Odell Beckham, please make sure that you have a backup in your lineup because you don't want to take a zero this week. For the Chicago Bears, Cole Kmet was limited in practice due to a quad injury, and running back Donta Foreman did not practice due to personal reasons. So we don't yet know if he's going to be back for the game on Sunday. For the Cincinnati Bengals, Jamar Chase wasn't in uniform for Thursday's practice, so it's unlikely that he's going to play. Didn't really expect him to go after separating his shoulder and then getting a late MRI last week. So fire up your T. Higgins this week, and we'll talk a little bit about that later as a little teaser. For the Browns, Kareem Hunt was limited in practice. Um, for the Cowboys, Zach Martin and Tyron Smith did not practice Thursday. Zach Martin was able to get in a limited practice today. Now, I know that this doesn't really matter much in terms of direct fantasy implications, but if they go up against that Dolphins defense with two of their best starting linemen out, this could be an issue for Dak and especially for Tony Pollard. Now, moving on to the Packers, who have a ton of injuries going on. Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Aaron Jones, and AJ Dillon are all listed as questionable for Sunday. And as of yet, unless it's come across and I just haven't seen it, there's not been an update for them today. So if you've got any of those guys going, be very cautious. Again, have a backup ready to go and slot in place. For the Texans, Noah Brown and Nico Collins were both limited in practice Thursday, but CJ Stroud is still not practicing, and it's likely going to be Case Keenum under center once again. So it wasn't all doom and gloom with Case Keenum under center. He did have that connection with Noah Brown. They did come back and end up winning that game. Wasn't crazy fantasy production, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. So it's not the end of the world if we do get Case Keenum again. For the Colts, running back Zach Moss didn't practice Thursday, but Michael Pittman was a full participant and will play. They'll also likely get Jonathan Taylor back as well. So if you were one of those people who went out and picked up Trey Sermon or Tyler Goodson, I don't really know how much value they're going to provide for you. But if you have Jonathan Taylor, then you're celebrating. It is the give and take of fantasy football. Now, for the Jaguars, Zay Jones didn't practice and probably will not play per the latest reports, and nor did Trevor Lawrence. Now, they're being very wishy washy on this Trevor Lawrence issue, saying that he has better than a coin flip chance to start, whatever that means, but he still has to pass and clear concussion protocol in order to be in that starting lineup. I've already seen some things on Twitter of people saying, well, the concussion protocol in the NFL only matters if you're not an integral part of your team. If you are, then they're going to kind of circumvent that and get you back into the lineup. And with Michael Pittman and potentially Trevor Lawrence clearing, I mean, maybe they do have something to talk about there. It's a little bit interesting to see how that's all playing out. Moving on to the Raiders, Josh Jacobs did not practice again Thursday, so his availability is up in the air. Those of you that held on to Zamir White may get some return, but we'll dig into that a little bit later in the start sit section. For the Chargers, Keenan Allen has already been ruled out for Saturday night's game against the Bills. Really unfortunate situation all the way around because you were hoping, at least if Keenan Allen was back in the lineup, that the Chargers offense and Easton Stick could do something. But now I'm very, very hesitant about their chances to put up any points against the Bills, who just completely dismantled my Dallas Cowboys. We mentioned that the Dolphins are banged up, but at least Tyreek Hill did return to practice. The both running backs, Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, are listed as questionable, but it does seem like everyone is expected to play. What I'm more concerned with is the issues on their offensive line. 4 out of their 5 starting offensive linemen are listed as questionable. And if they're unable to go, we've seen Dallas's defense be pretty mean to opposing quarterbacks from time to time. Last week was a one-off, it was an exception, but that's something to be concerned about if those offensive linemen don't play. So keep an eye on them as well. We also need to keep an eye on Alexander Madison not practicing Thursday. More Ty Chandler time, baby. He did so well in that role. And that's something that I've been talking about all season long. His explosiveness, his dual threat ability. I just love everything about Ty Chandler. And we saw it last week. So if you picked him up, you're feeling pretty good about yourself right now. For the Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson and Hunter Henry didn't practice Thursday with Juju Smith Schuster limited. Um, I don't think that Ramondre is going to play. Now, I am a little bit concerned about Hunter Henry, however. If he doesn't go, then your options are kind of just like Zeke, and then that's it. That's about the only other piece on that offense that I would trust. For the New York Giants, they placed their kicker, Randy Bullock, on injured reserve earlier this week. And now their punter is also listed as questionable with a groin injury. I don't know how many of you have Randy Bullock or what you have going on with that, but they don't have another kicker on their roster. So they're going to have to make some moves and figure out what they're going to do on special teams if both of their kickers are unable to go. For the other New York team, the Jets, Zach Wilson didn't practice Thursday. He's still dealing with a concussion. I believe he was also ruled out just before the show kicked off. Um, Not great running with Trevor Simeon, but at least he does have some experience. I think he'll be a little bit better for Garrett Wilson than Tim Boyle was. Devonta Smith for the Eagles, and this is the one that's really, really bugging me because he was held out of practice yesterday. I just got news that he was held out of practice again today. It's a new knee injury, but other than that, we're not hearing any details on the severity of it. He's one of those players that has been putting up consistent points. I'm going to have to find somebody to swap out for him. And I'm a little bit nervous, even if he is active and does play, if he's going to be a decoy. So a little bit nervous about that. A couple other ones here, and then we'll jump back to the chat with some of your questions. Kenny Pickett has already been ruled out of Saturday's game against the Bengals, and they are making the switch from Mitch Trubisky to Mason Rudolph. Now, we remember that infamous Browns Steelers game where Mason Rudolph got hit with the helmet. He didn't look great even in any of those games that he started. So I think that it downgrades pretty much every single one of their positional players, except maybe Jalen Warren, who catches a few more passes out of the backfield and should at least see some dump offs from Rudolph. Kenneth Walker didn't practice for the Seahawks on Thursday due to a new shoulder injury. Don't have any details about that, but I We're waiting on the practice reports to come out for him today on the West Coast. For the Tampa Bay Bucks, Chris Godwin also didn't practice yesterday, dealing with a knee injury, but at least he was on Good Morning Football this morning. So there's that. So fingers crossed. Hopefully he can suit up and play because I do really like Baker Mayfield and the Bucks offense this week. Um, for the Commanders to wrap all of this lengthy injury report up, Brian Robinson was absent from Thursday's practice as well and was officially ruled out today. So don't know how confident you feel in firing up your Antonio Gibson or Chris Rodriguez's if you got them, but you can semi run on the Jets. So that is something to think about. All right, take a deep breath because that was a lengthy injury report. Again, it's that time in the season. Everybody's banged up, everybody's injured, and it's the worst time for that to come in fantasy. The waiver wire's depleted. We're in, winner go home games. It's just not a good situation. But anyway, for Dave, needs some help. My opponent had Puka going last night. All kinds of questions. How do you like people to ask? Just throw your questions in the chat. We'll jump back and forth between the segments and any of the questions that you have, and we'll go from there. So just ask them however you like. Merry Christmas to Lex, and Sellers is going to have to start Gabe Davis. But we were talking about this last night against the Chargers defense. He's been a ghost for the past 2 weeks. Maybe he finally shows up and does something because Stephon Diggs has not been that guy as well. So, plug your nose and hope for one of those 4 touchdown Gabe Davis playoff games. Keep asking your questions in the chat as you have them, and we'll get to them. But I want to know, for most of you guys in here, that I know there are a couple new people, if you have heard of or downloaded the BetterCast app. Because what the BetterCast app is doing is gamifying the NFL game day through the app. You can join our free to play contests. You can predict what will happen, answer pregame props, make picks during the game, and test your NFL knowledge. You can also chat with our community about all of the big plays, top performers, and busts in real time. So watch all of these games with us. We mentioned games tomorrow, games on Sunday, and games on Monday. So we'll be doing a whole weekend full of the BetterCast app. Download it by scanning that QR code or go to the Apple app and Google Play stores. And when you win tickets, you win real, authentic merchandise. So you'll have to go check that out. We are also running a very special promo over at Fantasy Alarm right now, up through the 26th of December. It is our holiday special. And if you go to fantasyalarm.com/win, use promo code Santa, you get your first monthly payment for just $4. So scan that QR code, go to fantasyalarm.com/win, plug that code in there, and get everything that we have to offer, from all of our DFS lineups, all of our sports, all of our tools, my matchup previews over there, Andrew Cooper's tight end coach, snap counts, rankings, everything that you need, especially at this point in the season. And for those of you who like baseball, our draft guide should be out pretty soon, maybe within the next month. So keep an eye out for that. And it, again, includes all sports. So make sure you hang in to that. Let's answer a couple questions, and then we'll take a quick break before we jump into our stardom sit-ems. So Chargy asks, who do I prefer, half PPR, Curtis Samuel, Demario Douglas, or Josh Palmer? Honestly, in half PPR right now, I think that it is Curtis Samuel because of the matchup against the Jets. You cannot attack the outside wide receivers against Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. Michael Carter has been hit and miss this season, but I think if they are going to move the ball, it's going to be through Curtis Samuel. Now, with Demario Douglas, I just don't really trust anybody on that Patriots offense. And with Josh Palmer, it's kind of the same situation. I know that he's the wide receiver one, but it was very fluky and very garbage time last week when he scored that long touchdown. I don't know if the same thing is going to happen again. So I would roll with Curtis Samuel. So Dave needs full PPR, needs 2 out of Jonathan Taylor, Isaiah Pacheco, and Devon Achane, and 2 in a flex from Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, and Rashee Rice. So I'm going to actually go, I think, Pacheco and Achane in this situation. I know that Pacheco is coming off of a shoulder surgery, but they get the Raiders and they're 10-point favorites. So I really think that they run that ball heavily. Achan, if you look at his lines and his over-under, he actually is projected for more receiving yard or more rushing yards than Raheem Mostert. And we've already seen him have rushing ability. And with Jonathan Hankins out potentially for the Dallas Cowboys, we saw how they got eaten alive against James Cook last week. So I would go with those two. And two in a flex, I'm definitely putting in Justin Jefferson. And then I think that I'm going to go with DK Metcalf. I really, really like Metcalf against the Tennessee Titans secondary. Um, but man, good drafting. You have some very good players and some very tough decisions to make. I don't think you can go wrong really with any of them. So then Miss Dasher asks, pick one, guillotine, Kenneth Walker, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler. This situation, I would go with Jonathan Taylor. I'm not sure of the health on Kenneth Walker, and Austin Eckler has just been horrendous over the past few weeks, and especially with Easton Stick going against the Bills. I don't trust him, so I'm going to go Taylor here. All right, with that, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will continue to answer your questions in the chat, and we will jump right into our Stardom Situm section and our DFS Sneaky Cheapies. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oh boy, we got a big one. We got a big card here. We got
baby, let's go.
We got a super rookie.
Ooh.
Do you guys want to guess who the big card super rookie is? Because
I'm going to guess somebody from the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't recall who were rookies in those particular years. So I'm going to guess Michael Irvin.
Adam?
Jared kind of convinced me to go Troy Aikman there.
I'm going to read the description. In this player's NFL debut, September 10th, 1989, he produced an electrifying 68-yard punt return for a touchdown.
Sanders.
He became the first athlete in the 20th century to hit a home run, September 5th, 1989, for the Yankees at Seattle, and score a touchdown in the same week.
That needs a sleeve. That one needs a sleeve.
Top 100%. Super rookie, neon, prime time, Deion Sanders.
I wasn't that far off. He played for the Cowboys.
I was going to say Deion, and then when you said the early 90s Cowboys, I'm like, oh, Aikman would be a good guess. So I go with your gut is the lesson there.
And there it is, the white and red Falcon jerseys that you said Deion came in with before they changed to black.
That was because the starting lineup for Deion his rookie year has got the red helmet with the white jersey.
Now look at that do. I mean, are you kidding me with that hair?
I mean, you got to have a headband with those curls. You got to.
That is sick. And this is a favorite card. Do we have any value on this card? We have to, right?
Let me see.
Give me a value here.
Let's see here on eBay. PSA 10 Gem Mint Deion Sanders, $149.99. And then a 9.5 is $6. So that guy might be a little bit. Then there's a much more reasonably listed one at $31 for a PSA 10. So it's got some value to it. Yeah, you might want to protect that one.
It's in excellent condition. I guess we have to worry about, is it centered?
Yes, that would be the next thing.
All right, well, we'll go through the process there. Maybe I'll just frame that one as a great moment in this show's history.
Welcome back in, guys. Again, thank you so much for joining us. If you're just now tuning in, this is Britt's Fantasy Blitz. And we are now moving into our Stardom Situm segment. And this week, it's so much more important than any other week because it is a win or go home week. And I always start this segment out by doing an accountability check. So let's talk about some hits and misses from week 15 because week 15 was kind of weird, to be honest. I did have a hit by starting Jaden Reed. He only ended up wide receiver 17 with 17.2 fantasy points, but he did leave early due to injury. So I still consider 17 points, wide receiver 2 territory, pretty good. I also started David Montgomery, RB23 with 10.2 fantasy points. Feel like if you can end up in the RB2 territory, especially with how hit or miss and how injured the running back position is, then we're doing pretty good. I did also have a hit on sitting Gabe Davis because he was invisible yet again. I hope for seller's sake that he's not this week and that he comes around, but last week he was. But as always, I did have a couple misses. Starting Zay Flowers. Man, where did he go? Wide receiver 102 with 1.7 fantasy points, one target in that entire game. I mean, just unbelievable. And then the big embarrassing miss was to sit Jalen Waddle against the Jets. But I will say, to be fair, we didn't yet know that Tyreek Hill was going to be out at that point in time. Um, I think looking at the numbers, it was leaning towards sitting Jalen Waddle. You can't always predict these blow up games. You just have to look at the numbers and see where they lead you. Unfortunately, this one did not lead me down the correct path. So, as always, before I start out this segment, this is just a suggestion in case you have another viable option. I really don't want you guys to go out there and pick up a scrub on the waiver wire to replace one of the guys on the sit list if you don't have anybody else. This is just if you're trying to figure out in between a player who you should go with. And so the first guy on my sit 'em list is Baker Mayfield against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And can we talk about how hot Mayfield has been the past few weeks? He's the quarterback 5 over the last 3 weeks. And going into the season, what we thought we were going to get out of him, I mean, he was ranked down there with guys like Desmond Ritter and Sam Howell. And, we did not expect anything good to come of this situation, but he's proved us really wrong. The Jaguars also have a lot of issues on their defense with injury. And now that Chris Godwin has kind of woken up and joined the party, I feel like the Bucs look pretty unstoppable. The Jaguars have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to the quarterback position and are allowing 256.5 passing yards per game. They're also allowing the most receptions to the running back position. So I expect a big game from Rachaad White as well this week. So that is my quarterback. Oh, Sellers, I hate that for you. Gabe in place of Flowers and Devonta Smith. Yeah, it's not looking good for Devonta Smith, unfortunately. Having another DNP day today, this close, and that injury happening on the weekend, don't really like that situation. Rex saying you sat Waddle too. Go back, probably do it again. Yeah, sometimes these things just happen. You don't expect him to catch a 70-yard touchdown to kick off the game. These big plays break off and sometimes they happen, but we have to trust the process over results sometimes because ultimately that's what gets us there. So going for my running backs this week, I'm going to start out with DeAndre Swift versus the New York Giants. Now, I know that DeAndre Swift has been a little disappointing lately, but he is in a great spot here against the New York Giants. The Giants have allowed the 10th most fantasy points to the running back position, and in what should be a huge win, the game script is really leaning towards a heavy run. Now, if they do get up big, we could probably see some Kenneth Gainwell. Boston Scott, the giant killer, could make an appearance. But by then, let's hope that Swift has gotten his already, and it doesn't really matter what all these other guys do. I still think he's going to have a great game. I'm also starting Chuba Hubbard this week against the Green Bay Packers. Now, I know that it's hard to trust anybody on the Panthers offense. I talked about the Patriots. I'm going to talk about the Panthers too. But Hubbard really is the lone bright spot in this offense. He saw 22 carries and 2 targets last week. And over the past few weeks, he's had at least 87 rushing yards in each game. Now he gets a matchup against the Packers, who have been very bad against the run all season long, allowing the 9th most fantasy points to the quarterback position and ranking 29th in DVOA. Not only that, 2 of Green Bay's linebackers are questionable to suit up this week in Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker. So Hubbard is in a prime spot to produce again this week and potentially get another win. Now, for wide receivers, I teased this a little bit earlier, but I'm really looking at T. Higgins versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. With Jamar Chase likely out against the Steelers tomorrow, Higgins does slop into that number 1 spot. And normally I'd be a little nervous about it, but with the way Jake Browning is playing, I'm all here for it. The Steelers' defense has also been decimated, especially regarding their safeties, with Minka Fitzpatrick already ruled out and DeMonte Casey suspended for the rest of the regular season and postseason. So I think Higgins has a massive advantage over Joey Porter Jr. in height, And I think that the Bengals are out to make a statement against their divisional opponents. So love that for him tomorrow. Kyle, great to see you in the chat. Thanks for my hat. I'm really excited about the new signings, obviously. And then Dustin in the chat says, I'm going Boyd against Pitt, returning to his college town. Yeah, if you've got Boyd, I don't think that either one of those guys are a bad play. I'm just looking for Higgins to do a little bit more. So for my other wide receiver, I'm actually looking at Noah Brown versus the Cleveland Browns this week. And yes, I know he's been limited in practice, but it is looking like he's going to play. And even if Nico Collins does come back this week, there's going to be plenty of passing work to go around. And Brown has showed a lot of chemistry with Case Keenum that we saw last week. The Browns are also dealing with several issues in their secondaries, with safety Grant Delpit on injured reserve and Juan Thornhill questionable to suit up. So I do think that Brown should be able to exploit the corners in the middle of the field. Now, with the tight ends, we're going to stick with this game, but we're going to flip it and look at David Njoku against the Houston Texans. I mean, he has just been such a target monster with Joe Flacco in at quarterback, and he has scored 3 touchdowns the past 2 weeks. The Texans' weaknesses on defense has also been against the tight end. They've given up the 7th most fantasy points to the position, and with the targets that Njoku is seeing on top of that prime matchup, he's in line to smash. If you've got Njoku, start him, play him with confidence, even in DFS situations. I think that he could be the tight end 1 overall this week. So for the sit-ems, we've mentioned a couple times with Sam Howell and just how you can't go up against the Jets. And, well, that's who he has this week. He has really, really fallen off the last few weeks. And not only that, but now this matchup with the Jets defense, who, despite getting wrecked against the Dolphins last week, are still allowing the second fewest fantasy points to the quarterback position. I do not like this matchup whatsoever. Then we'll throw in the fact that Howell got benched last week for Jacoby Brissett, and it makes me really nervous about what he's going to do. We've talked about all season about the fact that Howell isn't necessarily a great quarterback, that it's just the volume that's getting us there. And we haven't seen that volume recently. I don't think that we'll see it against the Jets. I don't think that this is a good matchup. Now, coming back to say, I do think that Curtis Samuel is the way that they move the ball, but it's still not going to put up good numbers for Sam Howell. For my running backs, we already talked about this a little bit, but Austin Eckler versus the Buffalo Bills. I don't really think that you can trust Eckler at this point in the season. This entire Chargers offense is just putrid right now. And with the way that the Bills dismantled the Cowboys last week, I'm really concerned about the game script here. Even prior to this, Eckler has been subpar pretty much since returning from injury, with 4 of his last 5 outings resulting in single-digit performances. Now, I know he's got that name brand recognition, but at this point in the season, you can't really afford the single digits that he's consistently been putting up. Having Easton Stick in there makes it even worse. And I don't think the Bills are the type of defense to let off the gas and let them get that garbage time that they got last week. So my next running back is Zamir White at the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know that he did a great job last week, but that game script was completely out of hand. I don't know how much the Raiders are going to choose to run the ball against the Chiefs in what could be a very lopsided matchup. The Raiders also rank dead last in rushing yards per game, and I don't expect them to have what they had last week where they were up by 60 points or whatever it was up against the Chiefs, who were favored by double digits in this matchup. Don't like White this week. Even though you can run on the Chiefs, just don't think the game script is there for him. Now, for the wide receivers, I'm starting with Terry McLaurin, and then I'll grab some of your questions as we finish it off here. So just hang tight in the chat. But I am going Terry McLaurin against the Jets because we talked about it with Sam Howell and why we don't like him this week. And it's much of the same reason why we don't like McLaurin. He's going to be facing the outside corners in DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. And despite him having a blow-up game last week, he's really struggled a large chunk of the season when faced with elite corners. I think this game goes through Curtis Samuel, as I've mentioned, and we just see McLaurin get phased out. So I really don't like him this week. Another wide receiver, Joshua Palmer versus the Bills. And yes, again, I know that he will be the number one receiver this week for the Chargers, but unlike the Bengals, the Chargers quarterback is much different. Sure, Palmer broke off for that big touchdown last week, but prior to that, he went into halftime having zero, nilch, nada on the scoreboard, on the box score. And I don't think that the Bills are going to be willing to give up those garbage points to Joshua Palmer. I think that he's a trap this week. My final trap, I think, unfortunately, and it hurts me to say this, is Kyle Pitts versus the Indianapolis Colts, and just how far the mighty have fallen in this situation. It makes me so, so sad to see Kyle Pitts anywhere near the sit list, but it is what it is. We've got to follow the numbers. Pitts is only sitting at tight end 15 on the year, and with the switch to Taylor Heineke, that doesn't really move the needle for me a lot. I think it's much of the same situation. The Colts also rank 7th in DVOA against the tight end, and with the usage that we've seen, you just can't trust him at this point in the season. So there are my start sits. Let me know if you guys agree. If you have any other questions, I do see Tootsie Pop in the chat. Hey, Rachel, Noah Brown has had epic weeks. And yeah, he has. I was a little bit concerned last week with Case Keenum seeing that chemistry, but just what they were able to do, I think that those fears are put to bed. I still think that he's going to have a really good week. And then Anne, hi, great to see you in the chat. Yes, let's go get week 16. We've made it this far. We are so close to the end of the rainbow and that pot of gold. I think we can do this. Who's with me? So then Mark in the chat, great to see you. Should I stick with Dallas defense this week, or is the Colts D worth a start? Man, I think depending on the situation of Miami's offensive line, then you can start the Dallas defense. I think that they will get enough sacks, potentially enough turnovers to return some value. The Colts defense, I'm a little bit nervous about. I'm just a little nervous, but that's just me. Join us on our Start Sit show on Sunday morning, and we can talk more about it as we get some more information about these injuries. Because defenses, I'm very wary of just swapping back and forth between defenses, because it feels like what Howard Bender says, like you're chasing the dragon with these defenses, just trying to find matchups, and they don't always work out the way that you think that they're going to on paper. So just be wary of that. But Anne has one more question, and then we'll move on to the sneaky cheapies. Have Flacco and Howell in a 1 QB league, Mullins, Heineke, Browning on the wire. Do I drop one? And if so, for who? Or ride with Flacco? So at this point, I'm actually leaning towards dropping Howell and picking up Mullins. I think that Mullins has a great matchup. That over-under is pretty high. They are fighting against the Lions for that divisional spot. They have to win out, and the Lions have to lose out. But I think that this is going to be a really high-octane game. So I'm leaning towards Mullins. And full disclosure, I'm playing him in a league if Trevor Lawrence is unable to go. That's my choice of backup. So take that for what it's worth. So to move on for the Week 16 sneaky cheapies, for those of you who play DFS, again, the accountability check, my sneaky cheapies in Week 15 were Matthew Stafford, Patrick Taylor, Odell Beckham, and Tucker Kraft. Well, we hit 50-50. So it kind of worked out. Patrick Taylor, that pick got dismantled by the fact that Aaron Jones came back into the lineup, and we did not know he was going to play. And then Odell Beckham just completely disappeared. So I have no idea what happened to that Ravens offense. But this week, I am going to go with Joe Flacco in DFS against the Texans. Now, since becoming the starter, Flacco has been on fire. He's come in at the QB6 the last 3 weeks. He's averaging over 300 yards in that span, and he has thrown for multiple touchdowns every week. The Texans have also given up the 10th most fantasy points to the quarterback and only rank 23rd in pass DVOA. Now, with the rapport that he's built with David Njoku, I expect another very big game from him. The reason that I recommended starting Mullins over Flacco is because I'm doing these sneaky cheapies based on the Sunday main slate. Just full disclosure on that, in case there's any cognitive dissonance going on here. So for running back, I'm also looking at Roschon Johnson $4,800 on DraftKings versus the Arizona Cardinals. And we've talked about how hard it is to trust anyone in this Bears backfield because there's no clear-cut starter. But it's looked in recent weeks like it is trending towards Johnson. He led the backfield in snaps last night, and although he didn't lead in carries, he did also see 6 targets. Now, in a PPR format, this is invaluable for your running backs to see that number of targets. He also has a great matchup against the Cardinals, who have allowed the most fantasy points to the running back position. So there's plenty of fantasy goodness to go around at his salary. For wide receiver, we've talked about him and dropped his name a little bit already in this show, but it's going to be Curtis Samuel coming in at 4,800 versus the Jets. Now, if the Commanders want to get through the Jets, they are going to have to work out of the slot, and that is where Curtis Samuel lives. Also, with Brian Robinson out, he could get some carries out of the backfield that boost up his value a little bit more. And he's seen 200 yards over the past 3 games, and last week he saw 9 targets. So that's nothing to sneeze at. I really like what I've seen out of him, and with the outside corners, I think that his streak continues on into this week. Finally, wrapping up for tight end, I'm looking at Cade Otton versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, as always, there aren't a ton of good discounted options at tight end, but I really like Otton this week for much of the same reason that I like starting Baker Mayfield in season long. It's because the Jags are allowing the 4th most fantasy points to the tight end position, as well as ranking 19th in DVOA. So I think Otton is set up for another good day. Even better if Chris Godwin is unable to go. So there you have my sneaky cheapies for DFS. And again, this is just the main slate for Sunday. So if there are a few more questions on the full slate, just hit me up on Twitter at Britt_Flinn and we can talk about it there. But I'm going to let you guys prepare your bold predictions for me in the chat. We're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we'll see what you've got for me.
From the Hometown Hero series, Zach Parise.
That is a very nice card, and that's one I'm probably going to have to organize a little trade ski with you, because I would actually like that card.
You got downtown Newark in the background. I mean, Newark has never looked so good.
No, it is not.
We'll put that back up on the screen. I just want to have a penny sleeve ready, and yes, we can absolutely work out a little trade ski for that, because that belongs in a Devil Fans collection right there.
I'll trade you the Braden Schneider rookie card for it.
Done.
There we go. The first card for card trade on Rip and Riff history. And it was that easy.
It was that easy. That's because, you know what? Because neither one of us are jerks. And it's the same thing when we try and do fantasy trades. Like, we don't try and screw each other. We have conversations. If there's a fit, there's a fit. If it's not, it's not. We don't try and, take the other one over the barrel. So there you go. In a penny sleeve. Hometown hero, Zach Parise. He was among the league's most productive goal scorers in 06-07 and followed up with a terrific regular season with an even more impressive postseason. And then they talk about what he did in the first round series against Tampa Bay that year. So that's off to the side for you.
That's true. And, if this is it for his career, he had a hell of a career.
He did.
Hopefully he comes back one more year with the Islanders, but if he doesn't, hell of a run.
All right, guys, welcome back in. We're close to our final segment because, again, time flies when you're having fun. And I always have so much fun talking football with you guys in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. It is time for our Week 16 bold predictions. And last week, wasn't a totally great week for my predictions, but a few came close. I feel like I just should have been a little bolder in some instances. So CMC had 3 touchdowns instead of the 2 that I predicted. So I should have been a little more bold there. JSN did score the game-winning touchdown for the Seahawks, but he didn't get the 2. And then the other 2 that I predicted were just pretty horrible. So we're not going to talk about those. But I do see Ms. Dasher in the chat. Chuba Hubbard with 175 total yards. Yes, I love that one, especially after he showed up on my start column. And after I'm pretty sure I'm going to start him in a couple leagues this week. So I really hope that one comes true. I'm going to start off with my first one. I think, and this is wild and crazy and out there, the New York Giants beat the Eagles for their 4th straight loss. Okay. This may be the craziest thing I've said on the show, except for maybe the Jets beating the Dolphins last week. But you know what? I am manifesting this. As a Cowboys fan and an Eagles hater, I am manifesting this. They are in a free fall situation. They've lost their last 3 in a row. And with all the hype around Tommy DeVito, maybe he can turn the Giants around now that Darren Waller has re-entered the lineup. The Eagles are pretty bad against the tight end. I'm just very interested in seeing how this game goes, what the mood of that locker room is going into this game after Jalen Hurts' comments about how people weren't concentrating enough, that they didn't have enough input, very interested to see how the mood there goes. And I think that the Giants could pull off a divisional upset. I do see a few more here in the chat, all really fun. Mark with DJ Moore 2 touchdowns. I'm down with that. I could definitely use a big DJ Moore game, especially since I'm going to have to probably swap out Devonta Smith or somebody else. If DJ Moore scores 2 touchdowns, love it. And then Dave kind of going off what I was just saying with this bold prediction that Darren Waller scores 2 touchdowns, which would definitely help mine come true. Maybe we can both be right on this one, and I would love that, especially, again, as a Cowboys fan. And in the chat says that Bijan gets 2 touchdowns this week. Listen, if Arthur Smith does not utilize Bijan in the proper way against the Colts, I think that he is fired. There is no excuse for him to not use Bijan at all, to use Tyler Algier, to use Bijan as a blocker or Cordero Patterson out front. If Bijan does not get this workload and gets this usage against the Colts, I'm just going to be verklempt. So I think that you're right on track there. And that actually goes towards my next one. I think that Ann copied off my paper because I said for my second one that Arthur Smith finally uses Bijan properly against the Colts, and we get a 2 touchdown game from him. So Ann and I in lockstep right there. The microscope is just all over Arthur Smith, and I think he needs to use his top talent to come away with a win here. It's not going to be through Taylor Heineke, because Taylor Heineke is not an upgrade over Desmond Ridder. But I do think that they will go through the run game. The Colts have given up the 4th most fantasy points to the running back and ranked 23rd in rush DVOA. So I do think that this is going to be a very good place to actually start using Bijan, as if Carolina was not good enough last week. I guess we'll have to settle for the Colts this week. So I also think for my third one that the Buccaneers get the win from the Jacksonville Jaguars, taking firm hold of the NFC South. Now, Tampa Bay has just been, I can't get over how red hot they have been recently. Despite only averaging 21 points on the entire season, they are averaging 28 over the past 3 weeks. This offense is rolling and is full of big playmakers. They have to win to stay ahead in the NFC, especially after the Saints gifted them a loss last night. And Trevor Lawrence could also be out, so the Bucs get a little bit of help there. So I really like the Bucs to stay on this streak and just continue massively producing. So Jonathan in the chat is asking, Ingram or Goddard, who has a better game next week? Well, for me, that kind of depends. I have to wait and see on the status of Zay Jones. I have to wait and see the status of Devonta Smith. If either of those guys are out, both of these guys get a bump immediately. So check out my matchup previews that will be over on Fantasy Alarm next week. I'll have them all broken down as part of our package. We won't have a show Monday, obviously, with it being Christmas. So you won't get my little previews then, but I will have them in the matchup previews. And just, again, tweet me on Twitter, and I'll get that next week. So Rex says, my Colts are battling for the division title with every game they play. So JT and Bijan break away for 100 and a touchdown with my Colts getting the win. I love that. I think that's great. The Colts have also been so good in these tight situations. I absolutely love them to produce against the Falcons. Dave says Dustin Hopkins will kick a 70-yarder and finally get the respect he deserves as K2 of the season. Yeah, I think that's great. Dustin Hopkins, I'm not big on kickers. I just kind of listen to the people who are smarter than me make those decisions. But yeah, a 70-yarder would be insane. So we'll see if that happens. Rex says both Evans and Godwin will have 100 yards and a touchdown. Can definitely see that happening. Absolutely love that one. And then Jonathan clarifying, sorry, I meant this week. I think I have Evan Ingram ranked a little bit higher than Goddard. I just think that it's a game script situation with the Bucks and Jags battling it out and having that even spread. I think it's going to be a much closer game with much more passing yardage. Whereas I think the Eagles are going to go to that run game and really settle in and focus there. So sorry to leave you hanging there on that one. So finally, my last bold prediction for this week, I think that T. Higgins is the overall wide receiver one on the week. And although he will have a tough matchup against Joey Porter Jr., I really like where he falls. He should really dominate that target share with Jamar Chase being out, and with the Steelers missing their safeties, those plays and targets should turn into big yards. So I really also don't think that Pittsburgh is good enough to contain the Bengals passing game, especially with how good Jake Browning has been playing. And we mentioned earlier that their starting safeties are out. So there it is, my bold predictions. If you've got any more from me, keep it coming. But as we're getting closer to the end of the show, y'all know what time it is. It is time to hand it over to our good friends at Sleeper. And they are participating in a special holiday situation going up, I believe, until it is the 25th. So only a couple more days. But it is Santa's $1 million picks giveaway on the Sleeper app. And you can pick between now and December 25th to enter. You choose higher or lower on individual player stats, get them all correct, and you win. Add additional players to increase your payout. Now, for this particular contest, each picks entry must be at least $5 to qualify, with up to 4 entries daily per user. Winners will be randomly chosen on 12/26, and the top 10 prizes are fully withdrawable. So to sign up for Sleeper Picks, scan that QR code. Go to fantasyalarm.com/sleeper and use promo code VAULT3 for a 100% deposit match up to $100 for your first deposit. So I've got articles over there for you at fantasyalarm.com that will come out on Sunday, but let's go through a couple of my favorites for this week. First off, I think that Raheem Mostert has more than 0.5 touchdowns at a 1.72 times multiplier. Has there been a more consistent player this season than Raheem Mostert? He leads the NFL in total touchdowns, even over Christian McCaffrey, and he does get the Cowboys, who just got torched by James Cook. Now, Jonathan Hankins doesn't look like he's going to be ready to go and back in that lineup, and that really does hurt their run defense. I really don't like saying that something is guaranteed, but I think this is as close to a guarantee as you can get. Next up, I'm going with David Njoku, more than 49.5 receiving yards. We talked about it already, so we don't have to harp on this a lot. Since Flacco took over, he loves Njoku. Njoku is an absolute stud, and he has only had less than this stat once in the past 6 games. And so against this Texans defense, I really like him to have another good day. Next up, I'm sticking with tight ends today for some reason, but I'm going more than 5.5 receptions. I think that since Zach Ertz went down, Trey McBride has shown why he was one of the top ends in the draft class, and now it gets even better with Kyler Murray. He's just been a complete target monster. And since week 8, he's only had fewer than 5.5 receptions twice. He does get a matchup with the Bears, but based on these targets, based on the fact that Marquise Brown is out, I think there's a very good chance he has more receptions than that current stat. I'm also going with Sam Howell, less than 213.5 passing yards. We can't trust Sam Howell against the Jets. They're only allowing 170 passing yards per game, and he's not the guy to break or deviate from that streak. Finally, to cap it off, I'm looking at Rachaad White, more than 25.5 receiving yards. To me, this just seems entirely too low for White, especially going up against the Jaguars, who have allowed the most receptions to the running back position in the entire NFL. And White has been one of the premier pass catching backs in the league. He's averaging 9.5 yards per reception, and with him averaging nearly 4 per game, he should be able to get this number easily. So again, that wraps up our sleeper picks of the day. To sign up, go over to fantasyalarm.com/sleeper, use the promo code VAULT3, and first-time users get a 100% deposit match up to $100. So I do see a few more questions here in the chat. We will wrap it up with those because the hour's already over. Where did it go? Time flies when you're having fun. Mark says, would I start Breece Hall over Achane? I don't think so. I think I'm still going to stick with Achane. I like that explosive ability. And Hall has just been so hit and miss lately that he's really hard to trust in this situation. Mostert, oh, my scroller moved down. Danny Finns, great to see you in here. Mostert or Cook, I'm still going to roll with Cook. Is there a way that you can play both of them and get them both in your lineup? Because that's what I feel like you need to do. But Cook going up against the Chargers, the game script situation is just totally primed for him to have another breakout week. Then with George, Colts, Jets, or Bears defense, I'm still on the Jets defense. I think going up against the Sam Howell, the Washington Commanders without their starting running back, I think is a very good situation for them. So I'm more leaning towards them than I am anybody else. Seller says 3 touchdown game incoming from Gabe Davis. Let's manifest it because I know you got to start him. So let's pull this off. Then Anne, happy holidays to you, and you're so welcome. Thank you so much for joining this show. Jonathan, who do I have ranked higher this week? Devin Singletary or Ty Chandler? If Madison's out, I'm going Chandler all the way with Chandler. Then started Kamara last night. Oh man, that is such a bummer. That's the situation that I'm finding myself into. But I would still stick with James Cook. That's who I'm leaning towards. And then finally, our last question, Noah Brown or Aaron Jones. Jones and AJ Dillon are both off the injury report. Oh man, I think Aaron Jones. No, well, if Nico Collins plays, Aaron Jones. If he doesn't play, Noah Brown. That's what I'm sticking with. So good luck. Make sure to join us on Sunday morning for all of your start-sit questions. Myself and John and Pemba at 9 a.m. Eastern. Then Howard Bender and Andrew Cooper are on Sirius XM at 10 a.m. Eastern. Then John and Coop wrap it all back up at 10 and 11 as we get into week 16 of the NFL season. Make sure to go over to fantasyalarm.com. Check out that promotion that we've only got going on for a couple more days. fantasyalarm.com/win, promo code Santa, and make sure to download the Bettercast and get in all of that fun. Until then, I will see you next Friday since Monday is Christmas. Have a safe and happy holiday. Merry Christmas to everyone.